Welcome, everyone, back to the Space Education Summit. Really fantastic to have all of you here, and also to have my co-moderators and our panelists here. We've got a full schedule all day. It is just about 8 a.m. here in California. I know we've got people from all over. I see Washington and Jacksonville right in front of me. I know we heard from Miranda in New Zealand earlier. We've got folks from all across the US and around the world. Thanks for joining us for this free online Space Education Summit. I've got a few slides to share here to kick things off this morning. And of course, we will primarily be focused on the panelists, and this will be a really interactive session. Feel free to chat in the text chat at any time. And when the Q&A comes, we'll definitely be looking for folks to raise your hands and share your questions. With that in mind, Ron and Gitika and I and everyone who's been involved with organizing this event are highly inspired by the overview effect. I've got Frank White's book here. It's in its fourth edition now, but originally came out in 1987. Frank interviewed a number of astronauts and identified a change in perspective that people tend to experience when they see the Earth as a whole. That they look down and they don't see borders and tribes and the conflicts that we have here. What they see is a fragile ball of light with a very thin atmosphere against the forbidding backdrop of the vacuum of space. And they see that we're all in it together, that we're all crew on Spaceship Earth. People tend to come back a little more interested in things like the environment and diplomacy and getting along. So we're excited to try to bring the overview effect to more people here on Earth. And one of the ways we do that is having astronauts here to share their experience and to speak with all of you. So you guys will have a chance to ask some questions in just a moment. This is, of course, a very recent picture taken by the Artemis 2 crew when they got further away from Earth than anyone has ever been. Not at this point, but just a beautiful, very, very recent picture of the Earth to kick off our experience today. They did, however, get thousands of miles past the moon, breaking Fred Haise's record. What an honor and just fantastic timing to have Fred Haise here from the Apollo 13 mission. But we got some spectacular imagery out of the Artemis 2 mission just in the last couple of weeks. And in fact, they splashed down a week ago today. I didn't realize how good this timing was until this week, because it turns out today is also the anniversary of the Apollo 13 splashdown, 55 years ago, if I've got that right. So we're really excited to have Fred Haise here from that mission to share his experience as well. We do have a session at the end of the day about space stories. At the same time, all this is going on, I know a lot of people have been really excited about the movie Hail Mary, and oftentimes it's the fictional stories that inspire us as much as the real life stories. So excited to be able to talk about that today too. Frank will be talking about that during the closing space philosophy session, and also we've got some other guests to come in and talk about the power of mythology and the role that stars have always played in human history. So we'll be talking space stories today, as well as the exciting things from space headlines happening today and missions happening today. Speaking of exciting things happening today, very real life project underway by Moondow to send Frank White, the author of the Overview Effect, to space. So Frank will be closing the day with us, and really want to take an opportunity to promote his flight to space. You can all contribute through the links seen on the site right now. And if you contribute $100 to the fund, you also have a chance to join Frank in the second seat. So please, everyone, send Frank to space so he can experience the overview effect himself. Just a couple other acknowledgments before we get started. I want to acknowledge my co-moderators in this recording, though they're pinned to the screen here, but you should see Virgin Galactic astronaut Ron Rosano, who's been producing this with me for several years now from the very beginning, and Ron's been highly active in space education for decades. So we're stoked to have Ron with us, and Gitika Gorthi as well, Columbia University student and founder of Ignited Thinkers. Definitely check out her YouTube channel. She's got interviews like this with folks all across the space industry, and handles them beautifully. So Thank you, Ron and Gitika, once again for joining me and co-hosting this. Also, want to give a special shout out to Logan Jaron from Steam for Space. I know he's here. He's not pinned at the top, but I did see him here earlier, and he was sharing the mission patches that he so generously sends out to teachers. Oh, Frank is here. Welcome, Frank. Frank says he's got 10 days to go in the campaign, so everybody do contribute to Frank's campaign. We'll put that back up again later in the day. But thank you, Logan, for your role in getting Fred here today. And also wanted to share Fred's website. So if you go to fredhaise.space, you can learn a lot more about his experience and what he's up to now. With that in mind, I do want to talk about you all as well. We definitely encourage you to participate in the text chat. Use the raise hand feature if you want to interject. And if you're invited, definitely feel free to unmute or even ask to share your screen. But we'd love to hear your voice if you've got a question. Love to have you guys come on and ask your own questions during the Q&A time. If you use the help feature, you'll get Ron. So you can also DM Ron or Gitika or I, and we'll try to get you sorted as we roll forward. So if there are any questions now, go ahead and drop them in the chat. But otherwise, I'm going to go ahead and introduce our panel. And we've got a lot of great questions for you guys. And I know Ron's got some really specific ones. He's been diving into your books, and I'm really excited about the conversation. Glad to see what Gitika's got for you too, and what all our participants have for you. But yes, we'll have to put the QRs up again, and in any case, it's going to be all recorded, so you guys will be able to grab the book recommendations, the QR codes, and the URLs from the recording afterward as well. So I want to introduce our astronaut panel just very briefly. Almost needs no introduction, but Fred Haise is, of course, the legendary crew member of Apollo 13, and he is with us here today on the anniversary of the miraculous Apollo 13 splashdown. You guys know, of course, there was a movie made about that harrowing experience, but Fred's here to share it firsthand. He was also a test pilot in the Space Shuttle program, and so we can't wait to hear a lot about that. His fellow test pilot, Mark Forger Stucky, is also with us. He is a Virgin Galactic astronaut, like Ron, but preceded Ron by quite a bit as test pilot of the Virgin Galactic spaceships. So also really, really fantastic to have Mark with us today here, Forger here with us today, and to have the two of you sharing your experiences as astronauts and test pilots on the same day is just fantastic. So I want to sort of extend the introduction, give you guys both an opportunity to introduce yourself. The question I love to use, and we'll use it throughout the day, is what is the trajectory that has brought you here today? Obviously, both of you are astronauts. You're test pilots. You've had great experiences in space. But what is it in particular that brought you here to a space education summit in 2026? And this is an opportunity to share a bit of your story and any course changes along the way. To extend the metaphor, if there's someone, perhaps a teacher or mentor or peer who gave you a gravity assist along the way and changed the trajectory of your life, this is a fun time to share that. But Fred and Forger, if you could just each take, we'll start with Fred, but if you guys could take just a couple minutes and share a little bit of the trajectory, the path, the story that brought you here. But Fred, take it away.
All right. I've been, I'd say, blessed at 92 years old. First of all, to still be around, but secondly, to have enjoyed a great career that I enjoyed immensely all along the way. Challenges both in with NASA, as a military pilot initially, and a couple of Marine fighter squadrons, and then into test piloting business, 7.5 years as a test pilot for NASA, then into the astronaut program, which for me, I primarily joined the astronaut program at the time because I knew I would not get to fly the X-15, which was really my primary goal and interest at that time. And when I knew I would not get moved up seniority wise to get to fly it, that's when I applied to be an astronaut, knowing that would get me possibly a little higher and faster. So that was kind of my reasoning for that adventure that ended up on Apollo 13. I did get to train for a few other missions. Apollo 8, I was Bill Anders' backup, Buzz Aldrin's backup on 11, and John Young's back up on 16, and had hoped to get back at the time. 18 and 19 were still thought to be a possibility of missions, but I was but been in the lineup to fly 19 to go back to the moon, but of course that mission got canceled. But anyway, I got back into the test piloting business, but actually more in the program office, 4 years for the design development of the orbiter, and moved to the program office under Aaron Cohen, who was the head of that office at the time, and then got designated as one of the two crews to fly Enterprise. So I got to ride on top of the 747 5 times, and got to release Enterprise from that vehicle 3 times for test profiles on the way to landings at Edwards Air Force Base. But then I went in the business world for 17 and a half years with Grumman, then Northrop Grumman. And I guess most notable, a lot of adventures with the contracts I won when I ended up heading up a service company for Grumman initially, and then two companies I inherited when we merged the Northrop Service Company. Most notable, I guess, is for 12 years partnered with Lockheed and Thiokol, 12 years turned around space shuttles at the Cape on that contract. In fact, led an internal contractor accident board after Challenger. Worrying about liability, of course, company liability, but also to make sure everything in the flow we had done on Challenger was correct. And I had 4 years on Space Station Freedom for 4 years, and fighting mainly for money. It was a big challenge, which dealing with the subcommittee, the appropriations committee, to keep the money coming to just keep it alive. And during that, on paper, redesigned Space Station a couple of times to get things out, make it simpler, to reduce the funding requirements. And in a book I wrote, I wrote a chapter on that 4 years, and I describe it as my time in purgatory from standpoint of the struggle and the dealings with the Congress and trying to keep the money flowing. So anyway, I've had some other challenges other than riding around in a spacecraft.
Wait, it occurs to me that just about every chapter of that story would would make a great interview. I want to
Yeah.
hear about the Enterprise. I want to hear about Challenger and what a legacy is, and the space station that's still up there. How awesome! And as a segue, there's nothing better than the X-15. If Fred was looking to fly the rocket plane. That Forger probably flew the closest thing to it today with
Yeah.
Virgin Galactic. But let me throw it over to you, Forger, if you could tell us a little about the trajectory that brought you here today.
Yeah, I kind of joke sometimes that I Forrest Gump my way to a pretty amazing, unbelievable career. I like Fred. I started off as a Marine fighter pilot, became a test pilot. In the end, I flew for NASA for 6 years. Also out at the time, Dryden Flight Research Center, and kind of had the honor of working with Gordon Fullerton, who was Fred's co-pilot on the in the Enterprise days, and a good friend at the time. Uh, the I, for me, I grew up, I was raised very anti-military. My dad was a conscientious objector in World War II. And so, although I always wanted to fly fighters, it was just seemed like that was something that'd be impossible. But certainly grew up as a child of the space age, and that was my dream. But I got into aviation reading about Apollo 15. In National Geographic, there was an article about hang gliding, and that seemed like these people were making these contraptions that they could run off hills and fly with bamboo and plastic, and now aluminum poles and Dacron sailcloth. And I was 12 at the time, and that seemed like something that maybe I could do as this lower middle class kid in Kansas. And it took a couple years of convincing my father, but eventually he allowed me to. He went in with me half on my first hang glider, and Actually, in a month from now, will be my 52nd anniversary, and I'm going back for a reunion in Kansas here in a couple of weeks to fly off the Little Hills with people from back then. But anyway, as far as you know, I got into I hesitate to call myself an astronaut because there's a big difference between these heroes that were picked by NASA and did these orbital and lunar missions and me. But I feel really honored to have flown a rocket plane manually and taken it up to above 50 miles and done quite a few flights less than that and had some pretty harrowing experiences with the development of that. So I grew up quite envious of the ex-plane pilots. So a lot of satisfaction to be able to do that. One quick story. I heard Neil Armstrong felt that he was born a generation too late and had missed out on some stuff. And it's funny how it ended up. And then when I was at NASA Dryden, I felt like here I was a generation too late also. And now I feel like I'm a generation too early. So there's always promising things in the distance. And it's a very exciting time now for the future.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's maybe better to feel a generation early. At least it speaks well to our future. And it's so fantastic to hear you're still hang gliding, and I imagine Ron's about to bring it up, and I got another prop here because we both enjoyed the Test Gods book and so much of your story that was captured there, and the hang gliding and everything too. It's fun to hear about that again. Let me kick it over to Ron because I know he's prepared some questions for you guys. We'd love to dive right in there, and then we'll throw it to Gitika next. But Ron.
Yeah, well, thanks. It's great to have you both, and there's so much great history here. Um, so, just such an exciting time, like watching Artemis go around the moon. And I'm just curious, either of you want to share some thoughts, on seeing that mission go out and what it might mean for the future as we start to look at the moon in a maybe a little different way now. Fred, were you, how do you see the Artemis program progressing and
To make this easy, I'll always defer to Fred for the first answer.
Yeah. Yep. Fred, were you happy to see Artemis going out there and traveling around the moon?
Was that to me?
Yeah, go ahead, sir.
Oh yeah. No, I'm happy they got the media coverage in particular, and they got some good pictures. One thing the media did not talk about much, it was really a test mission. And I guess the flavor of the pictures of the media overtook things, but that was the first time people have ridden in that capsule. So it was really like Apollo 7 that did the testing of the Apollo capsule in Earth orbit. And it was the first time anybody rode that rocket. So it was a test of that on top of that rocket and also going to the moon. So it's kind of Apollo 7, Apollo 8 mission all in one. And of course, they did get great pictures that appeared to me that obviously they got higher quality, higher resolution pictures. So had better equipment, cameras than we had in Apollo days, the Hasselblad, and which would be useful if they continue on, particularly thinking about the South Pole area, which we never got good pictures of that during Apollo because most of the orbits were all equatorial. And so that was hopefully be useful to have that resolution, which is very important when you're picking where you're going to think about landing.
Great.
For me, seeing the Artemis mission, I taught for a while at the Air Force Test Pilot School. And I used to joke because I was there quite a while. I joke that I was nice to my students because you never know who you might work for. And seeing the the SLS launch from the Banana Creek area was amazing. I'd seen a lot of shuttle launches from my days at NASA, and just seeing the size of the SLS on the launch pad at 39B, it looked humongous, and you felt so much closer just because of the size of it, and it was very impressive. As far as emotions, there's a very strange mix of pride and jealousy.
Yeah, but anything surprise you about the flight? You? Anything you didn't expect?
I'm sorry, who's this to again?
Oh, this. Go ahead. Go ahead, Fred. Anything surprise you about the flight?
I'm sorry, you talking about Apollo 13 or
No, about Artemis. About
Artemis?
Artemis.
No, except they had one of their, I guess, bigger problems was the toilet,
Yeah.
which I knew would. They had alternate means of handling things, so knew that would not cause an abort. But I guess it would have been a nuisance had they not got it working.
Yeah.
But no, that was the only, I'll call it, problem that seemed to would be a nuisance for them on that length of a flight. No, the trajectory analysis, of course, was pretty well perfected and going back and forth to the moon from the Apollo days. And the capsule, I haven't read some of the post-flight, did have some, I guess, well, I call it software problems with false alarms here and there along that way and with the capsule on that flight. But they were not real problems. But again, it would be a nuisance, so they're going to have to do some software upgrade before their next flight to not have that get in the way of timelines in a normal mission. What would you'd want to be a normal mission? So that's about the only problems I knew. The propulsion overall worked, the service module propulsion, of course, the rocket itself. And I was interested in, hadn't seen anything on what G levels they got to on launch. But it was probably pretty close to Apollo because even though the engines combined solids and liquids produced more thrust than the Saturn V, they were also heavier. Quite a bit heavier, so the thrust of weight probably wasn't that far apart. On Apollo, we got about 4.5 Gs when shut down the first stage, which is the max. And of course, for fighter pilots, 4.5 Gs isn't that big a deal. Even in my older vintage airplanes I flew, I think structurally, most of them were good for about 7.5 Gs. And today's fighters, I understand, are good up to about 9 Gs. So, and sitting in a much worse position in an airplane than you are laying in a couch to take the Gs. So I don't probably wasn't too much higher than that kind of level.
Yeah, there's a pretty good video of a side-by-side comparison of the Artemis 2 launch with an Apollo launch, and Artemis really, the SLS really gets up and clears the tower a lot faster initially, but it was not carrying the same payload as a Saturn V would be. But it is very impressive. I'm totally on the outside of this, but what impressed me the most was the lack of, or maybe just how great the flight seemed to go. It seemed to go like clockwork. So, yeah, some nuisance alarms or something, but it just really seemed to go really well. There's some concern about the heat shield on reentry, and they changed the profile, so it was actually much more aggressive on the G's than the future one should be. And I guess there's something I was surprised with because as Fred said, as a fighter pilot, you take a lot of G's and their eyeballs down, and you're fighting to keep blood in your brain to stay conscious. Well, for a typical reclined astronaut, it's eyeballs in G's, which you're not fighting to stay conscious. But after doing centrifuge runs in some of those different positions, you do have to fight to get your breath. Yeah, so you do feel like you got the elephant sitting on your chest. So for me, 9 Gs coming in, depending on how long they had to do that, you have to forcibly inhale to get that breath in. It comes out really easy, but It's a different, uncomfortable thing that you have to do. So my hat's off to him.
Before we hand it over to Gitika, while we're talking Artemis, Fred, a question for you. You know, Apollo 13 was the furthest humans had ever been from the Earth, and that record was finally broken. I thought I would ask while you're here, what are your feelings or thoughts on that record being broken at this point by Artemis 2?
Well, I really didn't think much of the record. You know, we basically went a little over 60 miles above the normal orbits around the moon. You know, all the missions went into orbit at 60 miles. And at first maneuver we did, because incidentally, when we left the Earth, we were not on a free return, like Artemis and all the missions before us had been. So if we could not have done a maneuver to change our path, that first maneuver to get around the moon, we would have not gotten home. So that was why we had to hurry up and get the LEM powered up to be able to use the rocket engine and the LEM. And I think the FIDO, Flight Dynamics Officer, decided, well, he'd give us a little more margin. So that's why he put us around the moon at that 131 point something miles above the moon, looping around the backside while Jack and I shot a lot of pictures, being just tourists coasting around. And that time we were headed to splash down in the Indian Ocean by Madagascar. And then we made another maneuver a couple hours after passing the moon that put us back into the Pacific Ocean, close to where we could have a recovery ship. So at any rate, that was I didn't think of that. It's a big over. My biggest thing in the mission was initially was instantly disappointment after the explosion when I got back up because Jim Lovell and I were not in the capsule when Jack threw the switch that caused the electric short and explosion. So when we drifted back up and I got a look at the panel, it was obvious tank 2 had exploded, or not it had, well, I didn't know it exploded, but from the instrument readings, I knew it was gone. And so, but I thought we had tank 1, you know, intact. And so it would really not been a threat to our lives. We could have just kept everything powered up, but I knew it would be an abort and we would have to be I wasn't sure what the alternate plan would be, but it would be come back home as soon as possible without referencing mission rules. And I use this cup, my favorite cup, with children when I talk to, and they ask how I felt when that happened. And I hold up my favorite cup here, Eeyore, which I think the children can grasp. That's kind of was my expression at the time because I'd worked 6 months on 8, 6 months on 11, and as a backup, you train to go fly the mission. NASA had the policy then that they never wanted to slip a launch because of a crew. So basically, we could have switched out on any mission the whole crew the week of launch, and it wouldn't have mattered. The mission would have gone on. So we're done all that work and didn't get to fly, and then I trained 10 months for 13. And now I thought I was going to get to land on the moon, and in an instant, it went away. So I was just sort of sick to my stomach at the time with disappointment.
What a story you wound up with, though.
Yeah.
Well, let's Gitika, I'm going to throw it over to you for any questions you've got prepared. And yes, to everybody's asking in the chat, we will have an open Q&A in a few minutes.
Just have one question, but thank you both for taking your time to be here. I'm sure just how the Apollo mission inspired generations of students to pursue aerospace careers, the Artemis mission definitely did the same. And I see some students on this call today, like I think I saw 2 classrooms. And as a student myself, question I have for the both of you is you both had incredible careers, still doing amazing work. If you could go back in time and give your younger self a piece of advice, maybe when you were high school and college, young adult, if you could just tell yourself something, what would that advice be? We can start with either one of you who has an answer on top of your heads.
All right, well, I'll comment on all the Zoom calls I do with schools. I probably have a harder time getting through to have them keep the thought in their minds of younger grades, but certainly up higher levels. I talk to them about as they're going through school and I really work off a chart Logan had prepared that gives kind of my path in my career with a lot of education and training and that sort of thing involved to do what I got to do. But I tell them to think hard as they're getting up and getting through school, to think about the talent they've been born and blessed with, and how best to use that talent in their life ahead and the career ahead to pinpoint something that will match that talent. And I tell them on the school, I said it may be the favorite subjects you're taking that you enjoy more. You don't extra reading, research about things that may steer you a little bit into what that talent is. But I tell them, you'll be a lot happier and more successful generally in life ahead if you can match that talent up with something in a career sense. And so that's what a little thought I try to put seed into their minds to hopefully remember, if nothing else, from the question and answers. We do a lot of stuff about space, but keep that in mind as they're growing up and getting through school and thinking about their lives ahead.
It's amazing. I'll definitely remember that.
Forger. Yeah.
For me, there's something to be said about following your passion, right? Sometimes you don't know what that passion is. I knew I wanted to fly. I always wanted to fly. The other thing I'd say is just keep on trying. If you ask for regrets, I certainly wish I would have known what was possible and would have applied myself more. I'm had a great career. I had a lot of fun. I wish I could have done more, and I wish I would have studied more and looked at things that could have made me more maybe more competitive in other areas. What I don't tell school kids is that they can be anything that they want to be, because I don't think that's true, and I think most school kids know that. What I do tell them is they can be a lot more than they probably think is possible. And it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. And I've had this amazing career just by having an interest and just keeping on trying and people quit and doors open. And the other thing is every single bad deal I've ever had has in the end ended up being a good deal. Every single one. So enjoy, pick a path that you want. When there's a fork in the road, if it doesn't work out for you, just keep on looking for opportunities, and it's amazing what can happen in the end.
Yeah. I think we can open it up maybe because I know people are eager to ask questions.
Definitely, we've got some folks with hands up, but I know before we do that, and because we do have plenty of time at this point, Ron, I know you had some other specific questions queued up. Is there something you want to sneak in there before we open up to everybody?
Oh, no, thanks. I'm happy to toss over to Frank White here, if you'd like to go ahead, Frank.
Oh yeah, let's start with Frank, and then we'll make our way through the hands.
Yeah.
I'd like to, but Martina got her hand up first.
Okay.
So, Martina, you go first, and then I'll follow you.
Are you sure?
Yes.
Okay, so I have something here. I happen to have a patch of Apollo 13. And I have a question about the patch because it's a special patch. It's one of the few that does not have astronaut names on it. And I'm wondering if you would like to comment more about like how the patches are made, if the crew is involved in making the patches. Does it kind of bother you that your name is on it, or is it not a big deal? Like what does the patch mean to you? And also, do suborbital flights have patches? Because I actually don't know the answer to the question.
Okay, the patch I had nothing to do with. Jim Lovell connected with Lumen Winters, an artist and sculptor in New York, and to get a painting done. And actually, the painting had a fourth horse. It was kind of prophetic because that was obviously long before the mission. And the fourth horse is kind of lagging back. So it's almost like prophetic about the change out of the crew. And Ken Mattingly being removed 2.5 days before launch. But the reason there's no names, Apollo 11 had no names. That was the other patch, I think, that had no name. Right, yeah. And Jim Lovell thought, well, we had more time to train. As I said, I trained 6 months for 8 and 11, but 10 months for 13. And so we did more geology field trip training. So Jim felt we were we were better trained to do the real job. What you should do when you land on the moon is to set up the experiment central station, and experiments, but otherwise to do a good geology survey, collecting samples in the area where you landed. So he felt we were better scientists, geologists than previous crews. So Jim elected not to have our names on the patch. So that's how that got about. I think he had a second part to the question. I didn't get that.
I think there was the second part was about suborbital flights. Like I'm not sure if those have patches, if anyone knows.
Yeah. How often did you bring in a new patch for Enterprise or Unity flights? I only
Uh,
have it on my flight, you know.
yeah, so I'd say almost all the missions have patches. The story I heard about Apollo 11 not having their names was that was a Neil Armstrong decision, that the mission was more than just the names of the astronauts, which is I think says a lot about Neil Armstrong himself. Uh, yeah, I actually did design the patch for our uh, for for Spaceship Two Enterprises powered flight campaign. Um, for whatever that's worth. It's interesting that we had initial patch in our glide flight days that said "when in doubt," and had the spaceship in the feathered configuration, which is the way to re-enter. And that feather ended up, definitely helping me a couple of times, but it also caused a fatal accident with some when it was actuated earlier than it should have been by a number of seconds. So anyway, just is interesting.
Yeah, I just want to show like one fun thing that I just noticed, like having these patches side by side. Like, look at this one. It's like clear 13, right? And then you put this one next to it. What number is it?
It'd be two in Roman numerals, but
Right, right. So I have not like noticed that they were not consistent about Roman and Arabic numbers, and I was born on 1113, so I basically got the patches matching like my birthday, and I basically flip this one over to make sure I get the right one because I did not realize that they were not consistent about like the numbers. So it's just like a fun side note, and maybe a quick side note, like if I funny hobby, I collect selfies with astronauts. And if I wanted to meet either of you somewhere in person, like, are you meetable? Like, do you attend events or stuff?
Hmm. Oh, there's probably occasional events that
Yeah, if you guys feel like sharing, feel free, and we can put it in the chat after too.
yeah.
Yeah.
Frank, you wanna?
Yeah, I have a question for Fred. But Fred, mostly I just wanted to say hi. I'm from Mississippi,
All right. Whereabouts?
Canton,
Okay.
Canton and Meridian, and I think you're from Biloxi.
Right. Yeah, Dick
Yeah,
Truly's from up that way. Yeah, too.
yeah. Who is from there?
Dick Truly.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, there are not many Mississippians in the astronaut corps, and I think you're the only one in Apollo. Uh, I was just curious. So you grew up in Mississippi some years before I did. Did you tell people in high school, I want to be an astronaut or a test pilot? Or what was the environment like for you in those days with your interest? Were you encouraged or was it just science fiction?
Well, there was no space program.
No,
So
there wasn't.
didn't exist yet. No, my first interest and thought of a career path was to be a journalist.
Oh,
I had been on the high school newspaper and first 2 years of college, junior college really, but now called a community college. My major was thought to be journalism, and was planning on trying to get enough money to go to the University of Missouri for higher education and a degree, because that was one of the very notable journalism schools in the country.
Yeah.
And worked for the local newspaper. Sometimes in high school, whatever the big reporter didn't want to do, pee-wee games and junior high game, football or whatever, I got to cover some of those in high school, even for the local newspaper. And summers I worked full time as a junior reporter, and the city editor gave me the police and courts beat one summer, and the next summer more of the feature writing stuff with conventions and interviewing some of the major speakers. Like I got interviewed for a lot of events later, but that so I was intent on being a reporter uh, back
Yeah.
back back then, and interrupted it was the Korean War. I wanted to serve my country, and that's when I decided to join up. And the only program I could get into, my father always said, get into some program. He had been a chief of machinist mate in the Navy during World War II. And he said, become an officer, get a commission. So looking around, the only program that fit at the age I was 18 years old with 2 years of college. And the only program that fit was the Naval Aviation Cadet Program. The Air Force at the time required 19 years of age. So I had never been in an airplane in my life, even sitting on the ground. But I decided to, no, at 18 years old, you don't always think too clearly about what you're getting into. But I signed up, and it turned out, obviously, from the first time I flew, it was just like unbelievable experience. And that alternated instantly my thoughts about where I was headed. And I knew somehow my future life was going to be involved with aviation. So that's kind
Yeah.
of a abrupt change in career path thinking for me.
So we're just opposite. I wanted to be an astronaut in high school. I ended up being a journalist. And I'd
You
love
are
to
both
interview you. I'd love to interview you for my book. So we'll talk about that later. But
All
thank you.
right. Okay.
awesome. Yeah, and you are both such great communicators. I think it's served you both well. We're going to take a few more of the questions here. We've got about 10 minutes, and then I'll step back in with a few final items. But I will throw it over to BB, and if everybody can keep it short, and then we'll let Fred and Forger talk, and we'll get through as many questions as we can. But BB, take it away if you could unmute.
Yeah, I had put mine in the chat earlier, so I'll just read it. This is for both Fred and Forger. If you both had a magic wand as spacefaring pilots, what is the most important event that each of you thinks needs to happen next for the Artemis program, other than landing on the moon? And by the way, guys, this is a classic coaching question, so have fun with it.
All right. I guess I'll take it first. Artemis is no different from any program. It has to have the I'll call it to some degree a public interest to a point to influence Congress and an administration for support for funding. I haven't gone through that misery for 4 years on the early space station. I don't. Many of the general public don't understand the process. In fact, a lot of people I talk to, I get the feeling they think NASA has a big pot of gold somewhere and they can just go spend it however they want to spend it in any direction. But it's an every year fight. So Artemis, of course, right now, and the new administrator has thoughts of moving on to land on the moon, and particularly some to explore a little bit of the area near the South Pole, where there's thought to be ice and some of the craters near the South Pole to furnish water, and eventually create a lunar base on the South Pole in the South Pole area. So that's kind of their hopes of how to proceed through Artemis and on beyond in the future. But again, clearly their progress is dependent on funding. As an example, the Orion capsule, was to be a part of the Constellation program. In fact, after I retired from Northrop Grumman after 17 and a half years in 1996, and they asked me to come back in 1997 to join others in writing a proposal competing against Lockheed for the Orion in 1997. Unfortunately, we lost, and Lockheed got to build Orion. And I don't know how long it took them to get their prototype and initial design done. It was probably in 2000, 2001. So Orion's been around since that time, 2000, say 1 or 2. And of course, what happened is the Constellation program started by Bush, got canceled during Obama's administration because the thought was it cost too much. And so it kind of limped along with minimal funding, I guess, to retain some of the engineering talent around Orion with Lockheed to eventually rise again as part of the Artemis program. And that grew up. And so that there has finally had its second flight, the capsule. Had one unmanned flight, 2.5 years ago. So that's the way the business goes on major expensive programs. And as you have to continually somehow fight to retain the funding to make the progress intended in the program plan. And if you don't, things just stretch out.
Thanks, Fred. That's I love that insight comes from that later phase of your career, working with the program office. Forger, what about you? If you had the magic wand, what comes next?
Yeah, I think somehow fixing the budget process so it's not so dependent on which politician is in charge for that period of time. And I think as a nation, as a world, we need to pick our goals, and these are long-term goals, and they extend past multiple administrations. And but the only way we could possibly do that is I think, as Fred said, is to have the inspiration of the whole country and have the world unite. When I was at test pilot school, I had John Young come and talk to us one time, talk to their class, and he talked. I was surprised how much he got into the threat of asteroids, the meteorite collisions with the Earth being so much of a threat, and it seemed kind of like out there at the time. I was kind of surprised, and that was before Armageddon and these other movies came, and the more we learn, it really is a threat for wiping out all of humanity if we don't think of really long-term goals that involve, as Jeff Bezos says, millions of people living and working in space. That's ultimately the way to survive, and just having these intermediate goals to work towards there. To progress the human race, I think is one way to do it.
Thank you, gentlemen, for your answers. I appreciate it. I got a book. I'll log on the phone. Okay, thank you.
Thanks for your question. And I'm glad we got there in this opening session, because ultimately, you can argue about money and you can argue about why and how, but we've got to proceed if it comes down to avoiding existential threats and achieving our higher aspirations for humanity and kind of the entire terrestrial biosphere as we expand through the solar system and perhaps beyond. I want to swing back around to Nicole in just a moment, but I noticed that my friend Dr. Kirby Runyon also has a question. And I know Fred mentioned his geology training. I imagine they're related, Kirby. Fire away.
Mr. Haise, Mr. Stucky, it's really an honor to get to speak with you. Mark and I run planetary analog trips to New Mexico to some Kilbourne Hole and Aden Crater. You might have been there.
Yes.
Yeah, cool. Actually, my question wasn't so much about the geology, but it's kind of from the perspective of a liberal arts education. And so my question is, what classes were the most surprisingly useful? What non-technical classes were the most surprisingly useful in your technical careers?
Well, the kind of training we got was actual field trips to specified areas that would have some feature or some outcrops or material that was thought to be germane for what we might see and need to collect samples and explore on the moon. Of the 4 missions I trained for, I did 31 field trips, 31 geology field trips, mostly around the United States, but some continental United States, some in Canada, Germany, and a couple in Hawaii. So that's the kind of experience I had. I think that what geology opened my eyes to differently than in a different way. My reading about astronomy, I got interested in that somewhat in high school and read some information and got to appreciate a little bit about how big the universe was. Geology opened my eyes up more to the just in the Earth at least, the time domain, the long time domain. One as you mentioned, Media Crater and things like that, and Grand Canyon was another one of our early rookie experiences, and where it's laid out in a layer cake set of formations from top to bottom of the Grand Canyon. And to just walk, and we walked all the way down to the bottom and camped out at the bottom even one night while we did that trip. And to see that time domain from the top to the bottom through those layers that covered a little over 1 billion years, I think it was, to the bottom breccia unit that was down at the very bottom of the Grand Canyon. And those then how much the world had changed in that area with some of the limestone, large limestone beds, which indicated at some time that the whole area was underwater. And another time there was a big sandstone bed that said one time that area was like the Sahara Desert with big sand dunes. So just in your trip down looking at those units. So that was kind of the biggest picture I got out of my geology training, and I call it the big picture sense, was that sense of how things continually are going on Earth, and it's continually changing and over large time domains.
And the moon is a big chunk of geology.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Forger, I know you can see the places that Kirby's talking about, Kilbourne Hole and the Carrizozo lava flow and white sands and that sort of thing from space, but also that initial question around the humanities, like what non-technical elements of your training really impacted you?
I did have a humanities class in high school that was only possible at another high school. I had to write a letter to the school board to get permission to go between high schools for that class, and it was so different and gave me an appreciation of. I was never that interested in history as a kid, and it's one thing I've learned as you get older is your tastes change. I hated salad and didn't like history, and I like them both now. But the humanities class, a philosophy class, there was even a logic class that was quite different and made me look at things differently and has come useful in the years since.
So, and we do end today with a space philosophy panel. So I hope you'll all stick around, and Frank White will be on the panel this afternoon too. All right, Nicole, let's do a quick jump over to your question, and Fred and Forger probably short answers. And I've got I need the last 2 minutes to wrap things up, but go ahead, Nicole.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Hi, my question is for Fred. Such an honor to speak to you. I'm also a geologist, and so my question was about your geology training. And it's fun to hear you went to Aden Crater and White Sands and Kilbourne Hole, because I did my bachelor's and master's at New Mexico State, so we went to all of those places as well. I was just curious, on Apollo 13, what were your specific geological goals? What kinds of samples were you trying to collect? Did you have any specific like types of rocks you were trying to collect? I'm just curious about that.
Yeah, and our mission was no different than the others. Geologists actually, through the lunar photography, and first of all, they were involved in picking the areas that the missions were chosen to land at, based on some feature. In our case, Fra Mauro I think the hills, and we were to explore primarily what was called the slope, up the slope of Cone Crater. It was thought the hills may have been formed from the spew out of material when the big dark area to the north had been formed way back when. And that would, so we'd find breccia rocks in that area that would be representative of material from at depth in the moon that has spewed out of that big meteorite or asteroid hit. I think I dated billions of years ago. So that was the reason our area was chosen. And the traverse planned on the second EVA was just primarily to walk up the slope of that crater, sampling rocks. And they did, Al Shepard and Ed Mitchell, when they landed there, to collect samples. Because of when a thing like meteor crater or on the moon, when it spews it out, of course, the way the material in the case of that crater too, Cone Crater, when it was hit to form that secondary crater, it's the rocks at the surface are up at the rim, and the rocks from a depth are further down the slope. They spew out. And in fact, we did one geology exercise at Jackass Flats in Nevada, which was where we had done underground nuclear bomb test. And we had to wear dosimeters, but they let us go in there. And because that same thing happens when the nuclear bomb was set off, it spewed out the debris in much the same pattern as it would be for any crater formed by a meteorite or asteroid. So that was what the primary mission was to. We, as far as the types of rocks, we didn't pre-predict what they would be. Just for us to collect a good sampling as they tried to climb up that slope, which turned out to be a little harder than I think we thought. They thought, and they got pretty tired trying to get up to the rim of that crater.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Very cool.
We got a little bit of a late start, but we are at the end of our time, and it would be awesome to sit here for hours with both of you. But what a special morning to have you together on this day, so soon after Artemis, and everyone with just fantastic questions and some great geology questions. So I'm gonna well, first I'm gonna ask Mark Forger if you have anything else you'd like to share to wrap up, and then I've got just 2 minutes of links and things to share with you guys.
Well, for one, I'm curious with Frank if any of the X-15 pilots had the overview effect, because I think I'm the one person that's been above 50 miles and looked down the Earth, and I don't feel I had the overview effect. It's amazing. Some of the stuff really surprised me. I was amazed how clear it was looking straight down. I equate it to, you can be in New Mexico and you can see 90 miles mountains in the distance, but to look straight down, it's like putting swim goggles on or a swim mask and looking straight down the pool for the first time, as opposed to looking all the way across the pool. The definition was amazing. It seemed way ultra like God had invented some supreme ultra high definition TV or something, way more than what you don't see in an airliner. But anyway, that's my comment.
Well, we can have a more in-depth discussion about that in our final session of the day too. But that's a great note to end on too. And I can imagine we're going to have some great shorts from these interviews. So thank you both to Fred and to Forger for your answers and for being with us here this morning. It's very generous of both of you, and I'm really excited about it. And Ron mentioned briefly, but Fred's book, Never Panic Early. I'm looking for my prop, but in his case, I just picked it up on the Kindle. There's you can get it on hardback, of course, and get that as an audiobook too. And a lot of Forger's story is captured in the book Test Gods. If you guys are interested in the development of Virgin Galactic spaceship.
Which, for the record, I don't make a penny on.
That's fair. I enjoyed hearing his version of your story for what it's worth. And always want to recommend Frank's book, of course, with the overview effect, and we'll be revisiting that today. And I have to, of course, share that my own book on space education is available on Amazon as well in multiple formats. So I hope you'll check that out, particularly if you guys are educators, but certainly meant for informal educators and lifelong learners as well. And we developed, when I was working with the Space Prize Foundation, we developed a free curriculum. It was designed for high school students, but really anybody that's got the interest and the reading level, from very, very young students to lifelong learners. It's a great place to start. It's not just an introduction to space science and history of space exploration, but also gets into the skill sets and mindsets that are valuable for astronauts and people solving difficult problems on Earth. Gets into the new space economy, gets into ethics, sustainability, governance, that sort of thing, and those future implications of avoiding existential threats and achieving our higher aspirations that I mentioned earlier. So I believe spaceeducation.org will still direct you there, but you can find it at CK12. It's a free and open resource for people everywhere. If you'd like more of that experience and more of this experience, I'm also starting a new version of this online space education course. It starts next month in just a couple of weeks on May 6th. Really embracing the idea that space education is for everyone. Half of the people that would take my course for educators were enthusiasts from other walks of life. So just embracing that this time around in a more ongoing format. So one module a month, 4 Zoom meetings per module, very much like this, digging into it in a discussion format, a graduate class format, and opportunities to ask questions of guest speakers as well. I'm stoked that so much geology came up here at the end of the discussion because Dr. Kirby Runyon and I co-host the Earth and Space Experience, where we take participants out to New Mexico. We do a simulated mission to Mars at the Challenger Learning Center. We visit Spaceport America, pictured here at dawn as we arrive, and tour Virgin Galactic. We see Spaceship Unity, and then we spend the next 2 days. We see the Space History Museum, which is surprisingly rich in New Mexico. Lots of space history there, lots of artifacts from the Apollo era as well. And then we spend 3 days learning geology at places like Kilbourne Hole, Aden Crater, Carrizozo Lava Flow, and White Sands, which are analogs for actual places on the Moon, Mars, and elsewhere in the solar system. So you tour the solar system without leaving New Mexico, and you can visit Kirby's site at planex.space/Planetary Society. We're going this time in partnership with the Planetary Society, so very excited about that. Other free resources, we do have a Facebook group. There's a handful of folks that are really prolific there, but anybody can join in and share resources and ask questions. I'll drop a link in the chat in just a moment, but it's the Space Educator Network. If you search Facebook, you will find us there. We also have many of the past sessions from the last, 8 or 9 summits run are available on the YouTube channel. It's about 100 videos at this point. We'll be adding the sessions from today as well, so you guys can join us. It's just Space Education Summit at YouTube, and also drop that in the links as well. So want to invite you guys to catch the recordings of these sessions, but also our past sessions. For the next several hours, it's basically a full school day here in California from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. We've got a full schedule of panels like this. So if you go to spaceeducation.squarespace.com, if you go straight to the schedule page, it's /schedule, or you can click on the schedule link when you get there. You'll see the full schedule today. So it's spaceeducation.squarespace.com/schedule. Most of you are probably already there. I'll drop that in the link in the chat as well. And our very next panel in just a couple of minutes here. Give us just a minute for a turnaround. It's scheduled for 3 minutes from now at 9:10 a.m. We are having our first panel, which is a space science panel. We'll follow that by space education, space careers, space experiences that you can have here on Earth, and finally that space philosophy panel at the end of the day, when we'll be talking space stories this time around. So I want to invite everyone to stick around. I will temporarily stop the recording for this session, but we will be right back here in just a couple of minutes as soon as everybody's ready to kick off the space science panel. So thanks, Ron and Gitika, as always, for co-hosting. Thank you, Fred and Forger, for being with us. Really epic to have you guys together, even for such a short time this morning. We all appreciate it. And thank you, everyone who contributed in the chat and asked questions.
Pleasure.
Thanks so much, Forger. Thank you, Fred. So grateful for your time.
All right. Enjoyed the visit.
Be well.
Questions were good. Good
Yeah.
questions.
We'll see you in space somewhere.
Okay.